a show, a channel on YouTube called Jubilee, and they host these debates where they'll usually have like a commentator come on, and they will debate someone who has the opposite political ideology as they do. But this time around, it was different. Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks was the guest of honor on Jubilee. And instead of debating against Republicans, he had to debate against Democrats and Republicans. This is the first time I saw this happen. So it's pretty interesting. I want to start with the piece here where they discuss the Democrats' performatism. Let's get into this part first. Get ready for some laughs, folks.
Look, if you say to me, hey, maybe Muslims have a disadvantage, even if you take class into account. So should we give a little bit of extra weight to Muslim candidates? I would say absolutely not.
Why not?
Do not do that. Because then what it does is it makes everyone bitter about the Muslim candidates.
Here's the problem.
And it makes them seem like they didn't earn it.
Here's what I find super important.
When in fact they did earn it.
So what you're explaining is the response to the policy, and you're not actually digging at the policy in of itself. You're saying because people will come out and be, racist or Islamophobic or whatever it might be because of a policy that is ensuring equality of opportunity, we should cancel the policy. But that is not a critique of the policy. That's a critique of the Republican or usually conservative response to said policy. So do you have a problem with the policy or the response?
So my point here is that this is among the different things that the Democrats do, where they say, "Hey, I think they're being performative." They say, "Oh, we're in favor of DEI." It might be performative,
but the output is important.
What the thing that would help African American community, Latino community, Muslim community, all those communities is actually raising the minimum wage, lowering drug prices. But we never do the material help. We never do the things that equal things out economically.
You still haven't critiqued the policy in of itself. You're saying people will get angry if we come out and we promote these different metrics of helping people.
No, I am critiquing the policy.
So what exactly about the policy is
because
negative?
It divides us.
How does
Pause here. This is something where Cenk Uygur and I disagreed with when he came on my show not too long ago, which is the part where I brought up reparations for American descendants of slavery for freed men. He was just like, oh, well, I don't really, what's going to put everybody on equal footing is these economic issues, but reparations is also an economic issue. And what I've tried to explain to him and to others as well is that still wouldn't put us all on the same level, because Black people, we are at the very bottom. Dr. Sandy Darity has done a really good job explaining this in his book, From Here to Equality, where he shows you different examples that have been tried or could be tried and how they still would not level that playing field, such as baby bonds or canceling student debt. While those things would help, we would still be at the bottom. The one thing that could close that, like close the racial wealth gap, is cash reparations. And that is a debt that's owed. It's not like Black people one day just woke up and said, hey, I think you need to give us some more money. No, it's part of the 40 acres and a mule that was promised to freed men, which has not been fulfilled. Thus, this is part of the reason why we are less likely to have some type of generational wealth. Now, the federal government came in a little bit later and tried to, I guess, fix that in their own way by giving the federal jobs. And that's something I'll get into with the unemployment story. But the reality is, for some, there is a debt that's owed. But I think the argument here, particularly what she was talking about, is some of the things that Democrats do for said groups. And Cenk Uygur was saying, well, those things are performative. In particular, when we talk about Black Americans, I think it's important to note that a lot of the things that the Democrats do have been performative. There's one exception during the pandemic, which was the child tax credit, which did help people. But then the weird thing about that was they cut it short. So that was just weird to me. That was one of them that could have really, that should have stayed, that should have continued, but they cut that short. The Democrats cut that short. So just keep that in mind. But most of the things that they do are performative, like the kneeling in the kente cloth, declaring Juneteenth as a federal holiday, right? Like, that's nice, but that doesn't actually improve the material conditions of the community. Let's continue on.
Policy divide,
even though it has
by saying that racism exists.
Yeah. So
but racism,
but not by saying that racism exists. So you have to acknowledge reality, right? What you're saying is now we're going to put black people in this category. We're going to put white people in this category.
Because there are categories that exist now at a subconscious level that we characterize.
So even if you get a benefit from that, you say, hey, I reduced racism by 10%, 20%, etc. What you're doing is you're not noticing the giant downside of that, which is then people start to view each other as black, white,
We've
Asian,
always done that. That's happening unconsciously all the time.
You're right. But what I would love is for us to stop doing that.
All of our psychology.
Stop looking at me as a Muslim and you as a black person. I want them to look at you as an American and me as an American.
If you want less.
That's not going to happen in the United States. And I think what people have to understand is that in the United States, this country is very different. Like when people say the US is a melting pot, it's true. If you travel across the world, you go to other countries, you'll see this, right? Like with the exception of the countries where we have military bases, if you were to remove those military bases, you'll see that those countries are not as, diverse as the United States. We are a melting pot. If you go to South Korea, for example, you will notice there's not as many people that look like me, right? Like, so South Korea is one of the more homogenous countries. So the reality is, I get it that he wants this to be a country where people are not going to care about race and these things are not going to matter. But as long as the US is a melting pot, people are always going to see that. Now, how they choose to treat you because of that is another story, right? Let's go on more. Oh boy.
Racism and less racial categorizing, or to us to see it as less of an initial categorization. Studies show that we need to attack racism and race as a concept like head on. We cannot ignore them or input race neutral policy into place. What we find is that characterizing race, saying what it is, saying what racism is, and thus confronting ourselves with our biases is what limits them. So no, we can't say, let's stop dividing people with the corrective policy. The corrective policy is helping something that has always existed. That's happening all the time.
So I told you I have an issue with the policy itself. I think it divides us.
You haven't explained it though.
And do the Democrats actually pass their agenda? Even if they agreed with you, did they pass Voting Rights Act? They did not.
The problem is capitulating to right framework with which I think was what you're doing here when you said the response to DEI is going to be negative. The thing is when we. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
So yeah, no, they didn't pass the Voting Rights Act. And that again was the Democratic Party. I mean, that's one of those things that some things you can blame the Republican Party on, but some of these things you got to point fingers at the Democrats. This next guy is crazy. Let's check this out. This is why.
Hey,
good to meet you.
So Democrats don't want to pass their agenda. I would say they want to pass their agenda. It's just, if you ask 50 Democrats what their agenda is, you'd get 60 different answers. We've got the environmentalists who hate the labor people. The labor people hate the environmentalists. We have the gay rights lobby. We have racial justice people. We have all different people, immigration activists. Like everybody thinks that their issue is the most important one. And I know you don't acknowledge that usually at the beginning of an administration, there's the maximum political capital. And if they don't get something in that time, then they weren't really trying. But what has happened in the past, we saw Biden pass a number of bills in those first 2 years, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, the American Rescue Plan. Obama passed the Affordable Care Act. We've passed all kinds of things, but we also all disagree on what the hell the Democrats should do. And that leads to the point where somebody is always frustrated in our coalition because we are not just a big tent, we're a 3-ring circus ring. Like we have such a big tent that's collapsing in on itself. Yeah. So this idea that we don't want to pass an agenda, the last point I'll make, because I'm taking up a lot of time.
Let's pause. Yeah, you are taking up a lot of time. First of all, I want to push back on something that he said here. First of all, the Affordable Care Act that Obama signed into law was a watered down version of what Obama initially said that he was going to do. He had to water it down so that he could get more approval for it. That's one thing. Two, I 100% disagree with him that they want to get these things done. No, they don't want to get things done because what we have seen is that there have been many times when they have a majority in the House or a majority in the Senate and they have the White House and they choose to defer to the parliamentarian. We've covered this on the show a number of times under Biden's administration. And if they were upset with the way the parliamentarian moved, they could have easily fired them. And that has been done before. That was done by George W. Bush. So we have seen these things happen before, but I do agree with Cenk in this respect that they really don't want to put it this way. They don't want to get things done that don't have corporate interests attached to it because their donors don't want that. It's like, even when we get to the minimum wage thing, which they will get to, right? Again, like, does that benefit their donors? Does that benefit corporations? No, it doesn't. That actually hurts corporations. If you were to increase the minimum wage, that means they got to pay people more money. So they don't want that. Chris Coons is a great example, senator from Delaware, Democrat senator who voted against the minimum wage. You got to remember, he's in Delaware. That's the credit card state. I mean, it's just, you just got to put all these things together. People don't give donations to politicians for them to benefit the working people. They give them donations for them to benefit corporate interests and corporate greed. That's what the donations are for. They're not to help us, right? So it's just, people still believing that these politicians really want to help them.
I would just look at the places where Democrats have all the power, like here in California. California, when you were growing up, I was growing up. I'm actually an 80-year-old man. That's why I got my Mr. Rogers sweater. It was smog here in LA. Like, you couldn't see 50 feet in front of your house. We created not just the most powerful environmental regulator in this country. CARB is the most powerful environmental regulator in the world. And that was Democrats that did that. So this idea that when Democrats have power, they don't actually know what to do with it is bogus. We've seen it here in California. We've seen it in New York with free college. We've seen it in many states. So I just don't agree that we don't actually want to do anything.
Okay.
What free college? We haven't had free college in years. Yes, at one point, California State University system did have free college for people that were, in-state attendees. And yes, also New York did as well, but that was a long time ago. What are you talking? Where's this free college at, honey?
So you mentioned about a dozen things there. Let me take two of them as an example. So the CHIPS Act that you mentioned, right? The Democrats told us when we were covering it live on the Young Turks, oh, this is such a monumental bill. It's so important. And I was like, okay, nobody's going to vote based on that. So put that aside, because that was definitely true, but okay, not pertinent to whether they were trying to do something that the Democratic voters wanted. So that they said that was for national security. Okay, there's some truth to that, right? And they said it was to, don't worry, this is to create more jobs. So now, what did they do? Very typical Democratic bill. They passed over $50 billion in corporate subsidies. The number one recipient was Intel, $8.5 billion in grants and $11 billion in loans. So about $20 billion overall. I said, for God's sake, at least put it in guardrails so they can't fire people. They said, oh, don't worry, Intel's going to create 10,000 jobs. You know what they did? They didn't put in the guardrails. And right afterwards, Intel fired 20,000 people.
That's just weird to mention guardrails against firing people when you rejected a union at your company and fired somebody for organizing.
Yeah, that is.
Oh, buddy. I knew that was going to happen. So here's the thing. That is always going to come up. Cenk and the Young Turks, they tend to be very, pro-worker, pro-labor. They speak about, pro-worker issues. But that union issue at TYT is always going to come up when you bring up this stuff, because people are going to be like, dude, what are you talking about? You didn't want your own employees to unionize. Right? But to his other point, yeah, they pass legislation that has corporate interests attached to it. That's what they do. That's what a lot of the Congress members that are there, that's what they're sitting there for, to pass legislation that has corporate interests attached to it. Oh boy.
Absolutely not true. You could say that if you like.
That is true. Look it up. There's a union now, but
you could look it up to a bunch of liars, but this is a random thing that you're throwing in there, I guess, to just personally attack me. But there is a union. I'll tell you facts. Do you want to explain facts? So facts are, yes, IATSE is at Young Turks. It's been at Young Turks for over 5 years.
Did you or did you not reject a card check?
Yeah, I did. And so in fact, card check, yes, that is the one thing I disagree with in the PRO Act. And yes, you are allowed to disagree with one part of the bill or 5% of a bill, right? And so in our case,
so we can compromise and have
my personal dealings at Young Turks. Okay, fine, we can do it.
It's not personal; it's a public thing.
No. Okay, no problem. Okay, but let me address it. Now you got into a weirdo thing that not about policy, not about the Democrats, but about my company. Fine. So since you smeared me, let's explain. So that people come in and go, okay, surprise, we didn't ask you for anything, but we formed a union. I go, guys, great, prove it. They say, oh, we had a secret vote, and then people come up to me, other employees.
That's what a card check is.
Hold on. Other employees come up to me and go, They're intimidating us. We didn't ask.
We're getting way off base here.
I know, because you brought us off base with a random attack against me.
Because you brought up guardrails.
Let me just say one final thing. Let me finish, because you're not going to smear me and not let me explain. Okay.
Winners and Losers says Cenk has not told the truth. He absolutely did union busting. He was running for Congress while busting a union. It was written about extensively. 2 NLRB cases. Cenk's anti-union emails were leaked. Yeah, I do remember this. And like I said, like Cenk, he can't get mad when people bring this up. They're going to bring it up, especially if you say that you're pro-worker, you know, you care about unionization. They're going to bring it up. Winners and Users also says he rejected card check, then 2 months of aggressive union busting, fired someone, withheld raises, bonuses, challenged the bargaining unit. There you go. So Cenk, he can't get mad. Like he should have been ready for this one.
So then I said, since people felt intimidated, it's okay.
You felt intimidated.
No. How do you know? You're not even, you weren't there. You're just making stuff up.
Because you're the one that farted.
So hold on.
You're the one that went to the NLRB and had
to. What the hell is this?
You don't want to shift the answer. You just want to filibuster.
Okay, let me answer. So then I said, for God's sake, just do a vote. No problem. You get a union the very next day. They did a vote. And they passed, and they got a union immediately. As soon as I was sure that all of our employees were not being intimidated or bullied, they instantly got a union, and we've had a union for 5 years. There's people who are like...
in response to public pressure,
that is not the story that I heard. That is not the story that I heard.
Who are making stuff up 24/7, and they keep telling people like you that we rejected a union when we didn't. We authorized it immediately as soon as we had a fair vote. Okay, now back to what you thought was, I thought we were arguing about.
Good talking to you.
I'm not really, but okay.
We love Purple Suit Guy, do we not? Where is he? Where'd he go? What happened to Purple Suit Guy? Everybody seems to love Purple Suit Guy. Oh, where'd he go? I guess he's gone.
Hey, Cenk.
Hey, how you doing?
Good. I have a lot of respect for you, but I worry about your progressive populism is dangerous. In fact, to me, you kind of sound like a political pickup artist. Like, just do this one trick and we can fix it all. And to me, it's no different than what MAGA is doing with their faux populism, with the deep state, with undocumented immigrants, someone to blame. You're just giving people corporate, corrupt Democrats or corporate media as an excuse. And I think you're just taking advantage of disaffected people and not showing them we got to get more involved. We got to invest more. We got to try harder and get good people in there.
So you're saying that don't even try progressive populism. Just go along with the establishment Democrats because they know how to win. That's why they beat Donald Trump twice. Oh, right. They lost to Trump twice. They don't know anything. Their number one thing was, we know how to win. They were liars. They didn't know how to win at all. They got clowned by a guy who's not that bright. Now, number two, we have this giant agenda, $15 minimum wage, all the things that we've talked about throughout the day. Oh, golly gee, we just couldn't pass any of it. Oh, wow. Okay. But hey, vote for an establishment Democrat. Don't get tricked by left-wing populism. Brother, do we actually ever try left-wing populism?
Yes.
Here's the three things we've tried. We've tried establishment Democrats, complete failures. We've tried establishment Republicans, complete failures. We tried fake populism under Donald Trump, complete failure.
I disagree.
So the only thing we haven't tried is left-wing populism. And you say, don't try it. Go back to the establishment Democrats. Go back to the donor class. Are you crazy?
But Cenk, you said the same thing in the end. In the end, when Bernie was cheated in 2016, you guys on Young Turks were like, go ahead and support Hillary Clinton. When they did the sabotage against Bernie in 2020, and Barack Obama called people and told people to drop out of the race right before Super Tuesday, and Elizabeth Warren decided to keep her ass in, even though she knew that she could not win. In the end, you told people to go ahead and vote and support the establishment, which was Joe Biden. So in the end, this is the critique that I have. This is the criticism and something that has really bothered me in particular about getting these policies over the finish line, right? In order to do that, at some point, you have to hold the line. And I even heard the case from Cenk Uygur in 2024, even during a genocide that was happening, still was, well, you got to vote for Kamala, otherwise you're going to get Donald Trump. So you didn't hold that line either. And that's part of the reason why we are here. I think, and I've said this before, if you really want to shake things up, at some point you have to have a red line. And what we have seen is that even with some of the progressive media, even genocide was not a red line. So that to me is a big part of the problem. Now, let's listen to the rest of Blue Shirt Guy.
Try the one thing we didn't try.
You say
Bernie Sanders wing, economic populism.
You say the American Rescue Plan that took half the kids in poverty out of it, millions of kids who go to bed hungry, is crumbs, is doing nothing? That is a big deal. What about the millions of people who have health insurance now because of the Affordable Care Act subsidies? No, you can call whatever you want, but the reality is millions of people have health insurance today because of what the Democrats did when they controlled the House, the Senate, and the White House in 2022 under the inflation.
It's crumbs because it was half the kids and then they cut it short. When we can do we can afford to take care of all of the kids. That's why it's crumbs. It's crumbs because the Affordable Care Act was a watered down version of what Barack Obama promised. And it basically it was an expansion of Romney Care, which we had here in Massachusetts. So yes, it's crumbs. Because it was not the full package. It's crumbs. It's like, I promise you a full slice of pizza. I say, hey, you can have this slice of pizza. But then when you get home, you see the only thing left on the plate is crumbs. Did I give you the full slice of pizza? No, but I promised it to you. That's why we call it crumbs.
Reduction Act and the American Rescue Plan. I can't stand that you call it crumbs. People don't want their whole lives given to them. They just want a little breathing room, like our big President Biden used to say.
So you say you're super happy with the 5 to 10% that the Democrats gave you.
It's not 5 to 10%.
There's two things here. Number one, I don't know what economic class you're in, but the average American is not happy with 5 to 10% change. They want giant change. They want the actual, by the way, the Democratic agenda is great. Our populist plank, the 6 most popular bills in the Democratic agenda, are super popular with independents and even with Republicans. But they never, ever do the most popular bills because they're economic bills. And you say that's good enough. But then why not try the entire agenda? Why not go with an economic populist like Bernie Sanders or Ro Khanna that's going to give you the whole agenda and actually try? Why give up ahead of time?
Those are great plans, and we should strive for them. But this is a giant country. We're the 3rd largest country in the world. We have a complicated democracy. We have to do things slowly. I know you don't like that. I know you want to get there, boom, boom, boom. But people do not want to abandon what they're used to. It sounds great on paper. Would you like single-payer healthcare where you save trillions of dollars?
Pause. Who is he referring to when he says people want to do things slowly? Who? Because ask the average poor person if they want to continue doing things slowly. Ask the people who can't afford to come up with a down payment to get a home and they're almost 40 or in their 40s if they want to continue doing things slowly. Ask the people who have medical debt and even had insurance, but their insurance that was offered was inadequate health insurance if they want to continue doing things slowly. All of these other countries that are allies with the United States have something that we don't have. They have health care for everyone. A good majority of them have health care for everyone, or they at least have a public option. And we don't. So when he says people, it reminds me of like, you ever had this friend? Like, I feel like everybody at some point has that one friend and they're having a conversation with you and they say, well, people say, or they say that they think that you should da-da-da-da, but they never tell you who they are or who those people are. They're usually talking about themselves. So I think this guy is talking about himself. When he says people don't want to, he means he don't want to do that. He don't want to do it. That's the thing, right? So if you take back all the money that we give to Israel, we can have more things for people here in the United States. I told you, Boston, Massachusetts gives $10 million a year to Israel. Does everybody here have health care? No. And we have mass health, but that's not universal health care. That even has, it's means tested. So you have to meet a certain income to even qualify for that. And then some doctors don't even take mass health. So it's like, I feel like this guy is talking about himself.
you pay less, of course. But then when you show people how we get there, they're scared, they're nervous, and they have a right-wing media machine on overload that is scaring the hell out of people. That's what we're up against. This is reality, man. Welcome to it.
So Martin Luther King called this the tranquilizing drug of gradualism. So they tell you, don't worry, we'll do that tiny bit, and then when you elect us again, we'll do another tiny bit, and 200 years later, this will get done.
Millions of kids not going to bed hungry is a tiny bit, James.
Let me explain in the context of healthcare. They say we're for universal healthcare. You go, okay, great, let's do Medicare for all. Oh, no way, wait too long. Okay, no problem. Can we do public option? This debate goes all the way back to the Affordable Care Act. They go, oh yeah, sure, we love the public option. Oh golly, gee, we had to take the public option out. There was nothing we could do. Okay, Obama says he had to take it out because the drug companies were opposed to it. First of all, you're admitting that you're giving into the donor class. Then Joe Biden comes in and goes, how can we do public option instead of over 70%?
We have 50-50 split Senate with guys like Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema.
You know how you do it, brother? You know how you do it? By trying.
Yep, they tried. They try every day.
No, but literally,
you're not on the inside.
No,
you don't know.
You're stating a misstatement, okay? So Joe Biden never introduced the public option. If you never introduced the public option, by definition, you did not try. Second of all, how do you pass? Oh, the Senate is split. Okay, you put pressure on. So can pressure work politically? Well, we know because Donald Trump did it to Republicans. Now, he did it for his own cause and for his own self-aggrandizement. But anytime a Republican crossed him in the first term, he said, we're going to eliminate Joe Wilson in South Carolina, and boom, he was eliminated. Now, imagine if you did that.
You want to bully our senators?
Yes, I do.
That's
absolutely.
What you want to do? You want to threaten their lives? What do you want to do to them?
So can I explain?
They represent their people.
No,
Joe
they
Manchin
don't.
represents his people. They sent him there. How do you know that? You're not from.
So these individuals are probably influencers. They're probably paid influencers for said party. These are the Democrats that are talking right now. He'll get to the Republicans in just a second. But what this is party loyalty, right? It's the whole thing. I'm going to defend my party no matter what, even if I know, they're not doing the best they can do. But that's really what this is about. Blue shirt dude is comfortable. He may not be rich, but he's comfortable. So when he says these statements like people want to move slowly, he's talking that he wants to move slowly. He's talking about himself. And I'm willing to bet you he's probably never gone into these poor neighborhoods. He's probably never talked. And this is the big thing, right? Like this is the elite liberal like class that I've talked about here. We have a lot of that here in Massachusetts where they support things in theory, but they're never willing to go to the mat for those said issues, right? Or they'll do some things that are kind of performative. They'll say that they're totally fine with gay rights. They say that they support Black Lives Matter, but they're also the first people to call the cops and complain. Like that's the thing. So it's like they support these things in theory, but the moment it enters their neighborhood, they have a problem with it because they support it at an arm's length. They don't want it right next door to them. That's the part they don't tell you about.
West Virginia.
Okay, hold on. They represent their donors.
So BS. Okay. It's an excuse.
Oh yeah,
it's
I know.
An excuse.
The donors
it's a
are non-existent.
They're
non-existent.
More
millions of dollars given to Joe Manchin.
More
he doesn't
people
care
donated
about that.
to Kamala than outside groups in this election cycle. It's a boogeyman, and you're wasting people's time with this.
Nonsense.
Yes.
Do you know that Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, after they voted against minimum wage increase, went to the National Restaurant Association and collected checks? They literally work for their donors. It is super literal. And what you're saying to people is ignore it. Ignore the donors. Ignore them.
Everybody who sends money
to those guys. It's disrespectful to Joe Manchin, and I intend to disrespect Joe Manchin. I despise Joe Manchin. I despise those corporate Democrats who never ever deliver for you, who never even try to deliver for you.
We're lucky to have Joe Manchin.
Here's what you say.
No, you're not lucky to have Joe Manchin. West Virginia is one of the poorest states in the country. They have one of the worst school systems in the country. They have high cancer rates in West Virginia because of pollution. Joe Manchin is doing and living very well. Let's get to her. Let's get to Curly Q.
Let's see.
Hey.
So your claim is that Democrats don't want to pass their agenda. You've talked about $15 an hour minimum wage. So how can you explain then that Joe Biden did in fact increase to $15 an hour for federal contractors with an increase again this year to $17.75?
Yeah. So again, it's a release valve. So why? Hold on. Yes, because it affects a tiny percentage of Americans.
It affects 300,000 people.
300,000 out of 330 million people. So that's why if you actually did a federal minimum wage, moved it to $15, that would move $92 billion from corporations to the average American. Okay. So that's what we want. I assume you want it. I want it. All Democrats want it. It polls at around 67%. So what I'm saying to all of you guys is please expect better of your politicians. So when they give you a 3%, oh, hey, look, I did it for 300,000 people. Hey, look, the drug prices, I lowered it on 10 drugs out of 10,000 drugs. Don't say that's good enough.
But
They're
Jane,
shielding.
you just said
That's a shield so that you don't question them when they say, oh, I'm not going to do it for everyone.
You just said that all Democrats want to raise it to $15 an hour. That has not been your claim this entire time.
No, voters.
Yeah. Right. But Democratic politicians do too. If Joe Biden didn't want to do it, why did he increase it?
But
for federal contractors, so he didn't have the votes to pass it.
That's exactly what I'm.
How much did that greatly impact corporations? That was for federal contractors. That wasn't nationally. The minimum wage hasn't been increased in years. Do people really understand how long it's been since the minimum wage has been increased? Since Barack Obama was president, I believe that was the first term, and I think it wasn't even implemented by Barack Obama. I think that was continued from George W. Bush's term.
Telling you. So what he does is he does it for 5% of people with student debt relief. He did it for 10% of people. He didn't do it for 90%. So in the case of the federal minimum wage, let me bring it back to you. Federal minimum wage. So he says, oh, progressives, don't worry. It's bare minimum. We're definitely going to do it. So they pass it in the House. They bring it to the Senate. Joe Biden does an interview during the Super Bowl right after he's elected. And he says, oh, we're taking $15 minimum wage out of the bill. The Republicans didn't take it out of the bill. Joe Biden took it out of the bill.
And here's the fact check right here. Biden said he didn't think his $15 minimum wage proposal would be approved in the pandemic relief package. So you see what I mean? It was voted down. Republicans passed an amendment prohibiting the increase, stating it would be devastating for small businesses. But here, this part, Biden didn't think that proposal would be approved. Now, to Cenk's point here, which he is correct here, when we get to the part about the Democrats and the role that they played in this, listen to this.
Trump did get rid of it on executive order. Okay, so now they don't have it at all.
Right.
So you're saying then that Trump, you're saying that Democrats and Republicans are both equal in terms of economics, right? How is that equal in terms of economics when Joe Biden raised it and then Trump took it away by executive order?
So, but wait a minute. But you're saying that even though he took it out, and then when Bernie put it back in, 8 Democratic senators, including the 2 Delaware senators that are the closest allies of Biden, voted against federal minimum wage being increased to $15. So can you not see that they're literally voting against it? They're literally taking it out of the bill. They're literally tricking you. They don't actually want to pass it. They get your vote by saying, oh, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And then the minute they get in office, they're like, I was just kidding. Take it out of the bill.
What evidence do you have that Joe Biden actually did want those senators to vote against it? What evidence?
2 pieces of evidence. Number one, it passed in the House. And I even talked to Democratic congressmen. They assured me, don't worry, it's going to pass in the Senate. It goes to the Senate and it's out of the bill. Schumer made that decision in conjunction with Joe Biden. So why did Schumer and Biden take it out of the bill? That's my evidence.
So Cenk, is your claim then that
and then secondly, by the way, when they did vote on it, his 2 biggest allies, both the Delaware senators, voted against the $15 minimum wage. That's overwhelming evidence. Do you think that they didn't ask Joe Biden? No, they called Joe Biden and Joe Biden said vote against it because he was lying.
That's not, it's just.
This is this woman here, unfortunately, and I know it may be hard for some of you to watch, but unfortunately, this is how a lot of Democrat voters think. They believe what she believes, that, oh no, it wasn't the Democrats. They wouldn't try to trick us. They didn't do this on purpose. It was the Republicans who stopped everything. This is what a lot of Democrat voters think because they're not informed. They don't understand how things work behind the scenes, right? So yeah, we knew the Republicans were going to be against it, but what helped them was having 8 Democrats join them. So you had 8 senators that should have supported it that did not. This is what I mean when I say, like, they are looking out for their donors. They're looking out for corporate interests. And had we continued to increase the minimum wage all along, all these years since Obama, we wouldn't be in this situation where it's like, okay, raise it to 15. Like during the pandemic, they didn't even want to give you an increase in wage. During the pandemic, They didn't even want to give everybody health care. But unfortunately, Curly Q here represents a lot of Democrat voters. This is really what they think. They think that everything that did not get passed is because of the Republicans, not because the Democrats had a hand in this play as well.
Not true, but also
that is literally true, and anybody can look it up.
Are you claiming then that all Democrats that take corporate money are against the people? Is that your claim?
Absolutely,
okay,
yes.
So then, why did TYT take $20 million of corporate money?
Here we go again with personal
attacks.
It's not okay, no problem.
Personal,
no problem. I want to answer it. No problem. Okay, yeah. So $20 million is an investment.
Okay.
It is not here. Take the money and then you do what we tell you to do. Everyone has. If you're building a business, you have to take investment to get to the next level.
Cenk,
I didn't take any investments. Most of us on political YouTube did not take any investments. We're just doing what we're doing. And again, that's another thing where, Cenk, that is going to continue to come up. If you're complaining about the corporate interest and corporate money, yes, that is going to continue to get thrown back up in your face because you guys did take that $20 million. Now, did TYT necessarily need that 20? You guys were already the largest political YouTube show at the time. You were already larger than all the other people. They're still the largest. What, they have over 6 million subscribers? So it's just like, he's like, well, wanted to take it to the next level. Yeah. I mean, you had things most of us didn't have. Like, it just, so that is going to continue to come up. Oh boy.
Hold on. If you don't take the investment, you're going to be tiny. So what some leftists say is, no, don't ever build anything. Don't ever take an investment. Don't ever do anything and build a big business. So instead, let the right wing take not only investment money, but direct money like Dennis Prager did, $23 million, and take it from the fracking billionaires, all those guys, and serve those guys. Let the right wing grow and grow and grow. But as soon as there's a successful left wing channel, don't take an investment. Don't take any money. Just be super small so we can't compete with the right wing.
Cenk,
you weren't super small. They weren't super small even at that point before they took that $20 million. Also, many of us have been able to grow without investments. I mean, to me, that doesn't make any sense. They were the largest show on the left in progressive media. They were the largest even at that point before they took the 20 million. Well, what do you mean? This is so confusing to me. So why do you need that money to grow? Ay.
That makes sense.
I'm pro you taking that investment. I've built a business. I understand that. I just think that it's ironic for you then to sit up here and say that everybody that takes corporate money is against the people, because then you would be against the people.
No, that doesn't make, that's apples and oranges.
Why is it apples and oranges?
I can explain perfectly. So should corporations be allowed to exist? Absolutely. Okay. Should corporations be allowed to give money to our politicians so they control our government? Absolutely not. No way. So when a corporation does an investment, that's a perfectly logical and normal thing to do. When a corporation buys a politician and those politicians then vote with them, that is a terrible thing to do. I'm a cap.
The point is, you were asking for people to be grassroots and you weren't grassroots at that point anymore. That's the point. It's like, and the investor, Jeffrey Katzenberg, was also friend and supporter of Nancy Pelosi. So you took money from someone who was directly aligned with donating to the Democratic Party. And you promoted the Democratic Party. Ay.
I believe in capitalism, but I believe in democratic capitalism where democracy checks capitalism. Otherwise, it becomes corporatism and becomes a monster. But I don't want to defeat all the companies, and I certainly don't want to defeat left-wing media companies. That makes no sense at all. You see how it's apples and oranges?
I don't.
One is a company and the other one's a politician.
Okay.
One is normal business. The other one is to influence our government.
Let's talk about...
No, I don't. We're going to get to the Republicans. They come on to debate him. No, I don't, because the reality is you didn't have to. There are many of us on here who have not done that. Like we don't have investments. Like, and people, and some have offered, but we don't have it. And yeah, we may not have 6 million subscribers, but the reality is, like, you were already huge before you decided to take that money. In comes the Republicans. Check this part out.
entrepreneurial spirit can be more aligned with the conservatives, would you say?
No, I don't agree. I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah. I run a small business. And so they are always talking about small businesses. And then they immediately change the goalposts to cuts on capital gains. Wait, that has nothing to do with small business. Cuts on estate tax, that's for the super rich. That has nothing to do with small businesses. So, brother, they use small business as like a marketing tool. Oh, we're for the average American. We're for small business. Then the actual tax cuts are for the mega rich and for the mega corporations.
What about minimum wage? Like, as a business owner,
yes.
You know, like the repercussions of minimum wage. I haven't been to McDonald's in a while. I went, it's been years. I went, and it's just a screen. You know, like there is that element, you know, of the minimum wage raising and that leading to more unemployment.
Yeah. So I don't agree with that either.
Okay.
So
the screen that he's referring to, right? That's in some of the fast food places like McDonald's. Also, I posted this on Twitter a while back. The Kohl's that I went to, they don't have cashiers except for the customer service counter. So you have to ring yourself up even at the Kohl's that I go to. So they got rid of some of the cashiers there. But that wasn't because of an increase of minimum wage. That was just because it's cheaper for them to have those machines than to actually pay people benefits. And that's been happening for years. That's been continuing. Like it didn't just start. That is one thing that Andrew Yang did warn people was coming. He told people it was heading in that direction.
So first of all, everything it requires bounds. So you can't have $100 minimum wage. I get that, right? But having said that, are we anywhere near where we should be on minimum wage? No, we're at $7.25 federally on minimum wage. That is a disaster. And so what that is if you work every single day, 40 hours a week, 52 weeks, no vacation at all, you only make $15,000 at $7.25. No one can live on $15,000. So when you push up minimum wage, what it does is it pushes up all wages. And that is a good thing, not a bad thing. They always tell you, no, give it to the corporations and then it'll trickle all over you decades later. No, there's an economics called middle out. And what that does is it gives directly to the middle class, and then they spend it more, and it creates a better economy, especially for small businesses like yours and mine, et cetera. So there's a way to do this. It gives to the average guy first, but the Republicans never do that. They always push for tax cuts for the richest people in the country.
So why do you believe that the populist element of Trump, where a lot of the working class, they're like, I know he's a Yankee with gold toilets, but I'm going to vote for him because he's not like vilifying me. Do you think that they're just being manipulated by Trump?
Yeah, 100%.
So
yep.
Look, I don't want people manipulated. That's why I do things like this. I don't want you getting manipulated by the politicians on either side. In a time where we have massive deficits and a $38 trillion debt, why are we giving another $1.1 trillion to people making over $500,000?
This is where I think Cenk Uygur needs to talk to MMT people. The debt and the deficit is a myth. It's not real. This is where, again, I think that TYT should employ themselves to talk to more people that are to their left, especially when it comes to the economics piece, because they're just spreading the same message here that comes from, MSNBC and Fox News about this debt and this deficit. And if you want to be independent, even though I don't think I wouldn't say that they are anymore, but if you want to be independent, you need to give a perspective that those networks are not giving, especially when it comes to economics. Like, why not bring on Professor Richard Wolff? Why not bring on Michael Hudson, right? Like, bring on people who are economically to your left so they can break this down for you. Also bring on Steve, who's come onto the show before, from Real Progressives, that breaks down MMT to explain to people, because otherwise you're just repeating the same thing that people are hearing on network television, and you need to give a different perspective here. But he's right when he says, like, they want to continue to give these tax cuts to the rich. That's true. Like, the corporations, rich people, they continue to get like these tax loopholes. They have offshore accounts, etc. But if you're an everyday, average, working American person, you don't get that. Like, you got to pay your taxes. There's no way around that for you. So it's like they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. They're stealing from the poor and the middle, whatever's left of the middle class, so that the rich can have the benefits that they have. So he's correct about that. Let's continue on.
It doesn't make sense.
I appreciate it, man.
Thank you, brother.
I'm Elijah.
Hey, Elijah, nice to meet you.
It's nice to meet you too. Do Republicans care about the rich? I do think they care about the rich. Coming from somebody that voted for Trump, I do believe that. But I do think that they do support middle-class Americans, especially Trump. I think this big, beautiful bill, people say it's hurting Americans. If you actually read through it, I'm getting a 3% reduction on my yearly income tax. Every single tax bracket is getting some type of reduction on their income tax or a 0% reduction. And that's for the wealthiest class. So that is helping middle class. Also, I know that the deficit's going up. Think about ICE, he's putting more money into ICE. I would argue that stopping immigration actually, or enforcing it even more heavily, helps the middle class worker in America. There's less jobs that are being taken. When you import a bunch of people, like your housing costs are going to go up. It's inflating the people that need houses in a city. Or apartments or whatever. It is taking jobs for middle class to lower class people like me. It's taking jobs.
Unfortunately, some of your premises are wrong. So
first and foremost, why does he keep saying middle class, right? So this is a trap of the political system. And it's been this way since I was a kid, as long as I can remember. There was always this constant focus on the middle class. We need to grow the middle class. We need to build the middle class. And there's a lot of people that are not a part of that, especially nowadays. I would say, what middle class in the United States, right? What about the people who are working poor? What about the people who are lower income? What about the people who are poor? Like, I just don't think, and based on what I've seen from the numbers, I don't think we really have a middle class in this country anymore. You have people that were middle class that have now become a part of, just the working class, the working poor. So again, that's another one of these tricks that I feel like it comes from network television and the political rhetoric from network television, where they continue to talk about this middle class that is almost existent in this country.
When you take the whole bill, including the cuts to Medicaid and SNAP and other cuts, the bottom 30% actually wind up paying more than they did before.
I mean, that's
so
the
they're
people
literally taking from the bottom 30% and giving it to the top 10%.
I mean, but when you talk about SNAP, that's people that are already taking from all of us. So
okay, see, that's your point of view as a Republican. Do you know the least popular part of the bill? The poll just came out. Only 24%, maybe even lower, support cutting SNAP. It is the single most unpopular part of the bill. Overall, Americans do not want you to take from people who desperately need food just to give to people making above $500,000. The second most unpopular part of the bill is the one that gives to people above $500,000. So people don't want that. So the bottom 30% are very badly hurt by this bill. What you're talking about is the middle, the percentile, the middle 10% gets a 0.4% bump. That's again the nickels and dimes that they throw you.
But that's not in the
Republicans
bill.
The Republicans throw nickels and dimes at you, 5 to 10% change in their tax cuts, and the Democrats through their policies throw 5 to 10% change.
If you don't think that a nickel and dime can help somebody in a dire situation,
but brother, why do we have to help the rich even more? Why do they get the biggest tax cuts? You could do a tax cut without one going to the rich. You could say,
because the rich people are the ones that own the businesses. When you own the business and you get a tax cut, you have more money to spend on your employees. I understand that's a Reaganomics principle, but it could be. And when when you're a Democrat and you import all these people from third world countries, you're paying them under minimum wage because you see them as the help. Well, yeah, that's gonna benefit you. But when Republicans stop this and they force people to, that work to be citizens, or they want people to be citizens, they're being forced to at least earn minimum wage.
The reason why we've never fixed the immigration problem is because corporations want cheaper
and that's
labor,
awful, which is why
and we should fix that. But the Republicans and the Democrats never fix that.
And so our border crossings are almost at 0% right now.
The top 0.1% are going to get tens of thousands of dollars in tax breaks. But you're not explaining why they need that. They don't need that. Why do you know that oil companies get about $15 to $30 billion in subsidies every year? How come the Republicans never talk about that? Oh, we're going to cut waste, fraud, and abuse. But you're not going to cut $30 billion for the richest companies in the world?
If you help people at the top, it's not hurting people at the bottom.
How come?
So the way that he is talking about this, we're going to call him, I don't know. We got to give him a nickname. But dude who's sitting there in the chair, the way that he's talking about this, he's talking about this the wrong way. Why is he arguing for helping people at the top? People at the top don't need help. People at the top take from the rest of us. Why is he making that argument? So essentially what you have here is you have Cenk Uygur arguing against Democrat influencers, I would say, and Republican, I'm assuming these are all influencers, Republican influencers as well. And at the end of the day, in that sense, Cenk should be making the case for a third party. That's what was confusing to me about this particular debate. When Sam Cedar came on there, he was arguing against, like, conservatives. Candace Owens came on there, she was arguing against Democrats. Cenk Uygur is coming on there and he's arguing against Democrats and Republicans, which all this debate did is just prove my point, which is that the policies that Cenk Uygur and many alike want to establish or want to implement in the United States are not going to pass through either one of those parties as long as corporate money is controlling those parties. This is why I say until you get corporate money out, it's going to be difficult, maybe on the local level, maybe, but nationally, no. You'll see how they line up to vote against it because their donors tell them to. So Cenk is here having this argument against both parties, but he's not making the case for a third party. And I know it's not easy. And I know it's there are things third parties got to go through. I get all that. I totally understand that. But when you're a news network that has over 6 million subscribers, the same way you got your audience to get on board for Justice Democrats could have been the same way you got people to get on board for a third party movement. That's just how I see it. But to me, it's like these individuals here, by the way, they don't sound crazy to me. This is what people sound like inside the parties for the most part. The woman who was complaining and saying, well, the Democrats are not trying to sabotage things on purpose. That sounds like the average Democrat voter. Dude here who's talking about what's wrong with helping people at the top. And, we got to keep, we don't have to raise this minimum wage or whatever, and wants to give more to the wealthy. He sounds like a Republican voter. So that's the part I never understood about this whole project. Why are you trying to fight back against this party structure? And that would be reform, is what I think Cenk and Kyle and all of them are trying to do, which at one time I did support until I saw that, these people are not going to let this happen because they're controlled by their donors. So you can do reform or you can change the system. And I think at this point in time, we are way past reform. It is time to change the system. You literally have both parties that supported a genocide. Well, why are people trying to work within that? The way that you become true opposition to all of this, not just to the Democratic Party, to all of it, you have to become opposition to the system. And you can't become opposition to the system if you're trying to work within that system. We'll go on a little bit more here.
Trump is best friends with Big Pharma, and he's not touching drug prices at all.
He's matching them to Europe. Yes,
no, that's an
example.
Okay, now that's a perfect example. He said that as an executive order, knowing that he did the same executive order in the first time around, and the courts knocked it down. He knows the courts are not going to do it. So, no, it is his fault.
Because hold on,
let me explain to you. So then what Ro Khanna did, he's a Democrat, he's really smart, and he went and got a Republican co-sponsor and said, let's take the executive order and turn it into a bill. Verbatim, Trump's executive order. All of a sudden, Trump and the Republicans not in favor of the bill. Oh, there you go. It was a trick all along.
When you guys have time, you can check out the rest of this debate. But the whole thing to me, I'm like, if you're debating against Democrats and Republicans, you should be making the case for a third party movement, not working within the same corrupt system that you know is corrupt. So the question is, again, what do we want? What do we really want, right? Like this debate happens, and it basically, I'm glad this debate happened because it shows you that both parties have the same corporate vested interest. So what do we want? We want full systemic change. And you can't have systemic change if you're trying to just work within the system and reform the system. Because it's corrupt. It's inherently corrupt. And Cenk knows that. And I think a lot of these people sitting there, I think they know that too. But I just think, I don't know. I don't know, you guys. We have to ask for more. We have to demand more. Like people tried to work within the system for criminal justice. How'd that work out? People tried to work within the system for education. How'd that work out? Something to think about. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.